So much like the rest of 2020, July has been a disappointment. Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today I will be doing a wrap up of all of the books that I read in July. And before I get started, I want to apologize if the lighting in this video looks weird, but it's because I have no sense of time management and I didn't film this on time. So the first book I read in July was A Fire and Stars by Audrey Coldhurst, and this is a YA fantasy about a princess named Daniela who has magic powers and is arranged to be married to a prince in a neighboring kingdom. But the joke's on him because Daniela actually falls in love with his sister.
Let's go, lesbians, let's go!
Overall, I thought this book was very cute. I thought the relationship between Daniela and the prince's sister Mare was very sweet. I'm a sucker for the old enemies to friends to lovers trope, and I thought they just supported each other very well, so I thought they were very, very cute. But lesbian rights aside, the rest of the book was pretty mediocre. I wasn't really impressed with the world building. There's little to no explanation about why the kingdoms in the books have the opinions that they do surrounding magic, why some kingdoms are really against it and then others are more tolerant of magic. And additionally, I really didn't get a sense of each kingdom's distinct culture. I couldn't tell you the difference between Daniela's kingdom and the kingdom that she's being married into. And this wouldn't have been a big deal if the politics of magic and the politics between each kingdom hadn't been such a major plot point. And speaking of magic, the magic system in this book was really poorly defined. It's established early on that Daniela has magic powers, but we never really learn what exactly her powers do, where they come from, why anyone in the kingdom or in this magical universe even has magic to begin with, and what the limitations of those powers are, or how those powers work. So that was pretty disappointing because I just didn't understand why it would be such a main plot point for the main character to have magic, but not really getting any understanding of why or how that magic works. But I know there's a sequel out and I'm considering reading that because like I said, I thought the romance in this book was very cute and sweet, albeit pretty cheesy. But I really just wanted more answers about the world building and the magic system, so I'm hoping the sequel might be able to answer some of those questions. The next book I read was The 10,000 Doors of January by Alex Haro, and it would be remiss of me to not say how much this book gave me the same vibes as The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. They're both contemporary fantasy books that were released in 2019 that deal with doors into mysterious worlds and protagonists who are adventure hungry and a secret society. And of course, this is probably, just a coincidence, but same vibes. I ended up really liking this book. It started off a bit slow, but once the plot really started going around the halfway point, I thought it was really engaging and really exciting to see how the adventure moved forward. So this book is set in the early 1900s and is about a girl, January, whose father goes missing, and she also finds a mysterious book about doors that leads to different worlds. And so this book is about her gaining her independence while also figuring out her place in this new world and universe full of different doors. So let me first talk about the secondary narrative, which is the book within the book. So I loved the romance between the two figures in January's book because I am here for the yearning. I'm a capital R 18th century romantic, so the longing for each other and the drama and the searching for each other was just right up my alley. And then back to the main narrative, I thought January's story was really compelling. Both learning about the type of environment that she grew up in, as well as her overcoming the oppressive systems and oppressive people that she's had to deal with and grow up around her entire life. I also appreciate that, with this book being set in the early 1900s, the author tackled the racist origins of anthropology, which is something heavily emphasized throughout the book, in the ways like how January and her father are treated differently because of their race, and in the ways that like the early practices of anthropology and like treasure hunting were super racist. But what I wish the book had gone more into was the actual worlds behind the doors themselves. So most of the book was spent in like our world, this timeline, and I would have loved to see more of the actual worlds themselves behind the doors, because there's little hints thrown out about like the 10,000 worlds that exist, but we really don't get a good look into like each unique world and how different they all are. So I wish there had been more time and explanation like behind those. A secondary plot line is this idea of the doors being closed, and I would have liked it if the author had expanded more on what exactly it means for a door to be closed and a world to have ended. And another thing is that January's father is a treasure hunter, and although it's like briefly touched upon, I think there were lots of opportunities for this book to discuss colonialism, both in terms of like the fictional universe setup and in the early 1900s of the like actual world that the book takes place in, and just understanding what it really means to like steal from a culture. And like I said, I think there were a lot of opportunities to unpack the impacts of colonialism and really think about what it means to steal from another culture, whether that's purely artifacts or take something more and like put another culture or society under an oppressive thumb. But overall, I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was a great story about like coming into oneself and just finding adventure and creating opportunities for yourself. So the next few books are going to be everything that I read for the reading rush, which was kind of at the end of July. And the first book I read for the reading rush was The Mermaid and Mrs. Hancock by Imogen Hermes Goar, and wow, this book was not good. I was really looking forward to reading this, and it disappointed me so much. I can only recommend this book to you if you enjoy purple prose, dropped and meandering plot lines, and little to no character development. Enticing. And despite the title, there are no mermaids in the story itself. So while I was writing like my notes for this video, I realized I just had so much I wanted to say about this book. So I'm going to make a separate video about this book and another book that I read in July that I didn't like so much. So I also read volume 1 of the Umbrella Academy Apocalypse Suite, because season 2 of the show just dropped last week on Netflix. And side note, if you have not watched the show already, you definitely should, because it's really good. But back to the graphic novel. So the Umbrella Academy is basically a story about a dysfunctional family of ex-superheroes, and the first volume deals with all of them coming back together after their father's death. I think someone would enjoy this if you really like fast-paced action stories, because things just keep happening and happening and happening and happening one after another. But I felt like that happened at the expense of character development, because by the end of the graphic novel, I mean, sure, I knew all the characters, but I really didn't care about them. I didn't really know anything about them or their motivations or like their tragic backstories or anything. So I think this book just wasn't for me, and that's why like the graphic novel just felt pretty mediocre. Next, I read Once Upon a River by Diane Setterfield. Objectively speaking, this book is pretty middle of the road, but despite that, I really enjoyed it. It's about a mysterious girl who shows up on the banks of a river, and the book deals with three different families thinking that she is one of their lost children, or child who's gone missing. So I think the book did a good job going into the dynamics of each family, how grief and loss has affected them, and how this mysterious girl fits into each of their respective lives. And everything in the story gets very neatly wrapped up in the end, which I know isn't exactly like unique or, you know, particularly like literarily groundbreaking, but as a reader, I just found it very satisfying. But I do think this book could have leaned more into an eerie tone and making things seem more mysterious, because I feel like it was just on the verge of getting there but didn't like quite get there, and it felt kind of lacking in that way. And then secondly, there's like this underlying thread of everything happening in the book just being a story. And there's like an inn where people go to listen to stories. And let me tell you, if you grew up in a small town, or if you know anyone from a small town, you know that people in small towns don't need a magic storytelling inn to gossip. They'll do it on their own. But something that I kept thinking while I was reading this book is that this would have made an excellent TV show. Just the different plot lines connecting with each other and uncovering the mystery of this strange girl. And it would have been like such a cool setting. And I really think the TV show could hone into like the eerie feeling that I've been missing. So I don't know, like someone at the BBC or Netflix, hit Diane Setterfield up. All right, that's enough of that. So the next book I read was The Roundhouse by Louise Erdrich, and this was just another pretty mediocre book. So it's about Joe, a 13-year-old who's living on an Ojibwe reservation in North Dakota, and the story is about the aftermath of Joe's family processing like a very, very brutal rape that happens to his mom at the beginning of the book. And it also discusses the legal complications surrounding the prosecution and potential arrest of the perpetrator. And the book also goes over like the trauma that Joe's mom is dealing with. And it's also discussing the ways that Joe's dad and Joe are like processing the grief and the trauma of the assault. So I think the book did a good job in getting to the point of like the legal battle and how it's already like so hard to prosecute sexual assault cases, let alone sexual assault cases that happen to Native American or Indigenous women, because of all of the like overlapping jurisdictions and legal like loopholes there are, and the PTSD that like Joe's mom is dealing with. And like the book really goes into the depression that she is dealing with after the assault. And you know, Native American Indigenous women are sexually assaulted at an astronomically high rate, way more than non-Native women, and most of the time, like a vast majority of the time, it's by non-Native men. So I think the book did a good job in like discussing that and bringing that up. Of course, that being said, with one half of the book being devoted to like Joe's mom's assault, the other half of the book is more of a coming of age story for Joe and his friends, and that's where things really just started getting downhill for me. Felt like there were just so many side characters, and with the introduction of this narrative, it really felt like the book was just trying to do too much, and it got really messy, and I felt like the book lost focus along the way. And because, you know, so many pages were devoted to this coming of age narrative, I feel like there were less time to discuss like Joe's mom's like internal feelings about her assault, because we mostly just see like how her family is affected by it and how they're processing her feelings, and more about the legal battle itself. And I just wish the coming of age story wasn't there, because I really couldn't find myself caring about Joe and his friends, because they're just side characters and they really weren't properly fleshed out. So that narrative just felt like really unnecessary, like I said. And this is more of a stylistic thing that I didn't like about Louise Erdrich's writing. While I wouldn't say her writing's like flowery, it definitely felt like she used too many words to say a relatively simple and straightforward thought, so that also made the book feel like very bloated. So in the end, I really wanted to like this book, but I just thought it was okay. And then finally, we're at the last book I read for this month. So I actually didn't finish this book in time for the reading rush, but I think if I had forced myself to like really quickly read it, I would have lost all my brain cells. This book was really weird because part of it is like a very gritty and realistic depiction of a POW camp, and then the other half is filled with really questionable romantic writing, such as the other beads kept growing and the first began to return as he waited for her to object, to shake her leg, to push him away, kick him even. He did not dare look up. He watched those perfect spheres of blood, 3 camellias of desire, continue swelling. Her body was a poem beyond memorizing. He kissed the second blood ball. Her fingers tensed in his hair, the 3rd blood ball he swept up with his tongue, just past the shadow line of her skirt where her thigh grew thicker. Amy's fingertips dug into his head. He kissed her leg again, this time tasting the salt of her, closed his eyes and let his lips rest on her thigh, smelling her, feeling her warmth. Excuse me?
No for me, though.
Listen, this book is full of weird and poorly written things like that. And as I was writing the notes for this video, I just realized there were far too many things I wanted to unpack about this book. So like I said earlier, I am going to make a separate video reviewing The Narrow Road to the Deep North and The Mermaid and Mrs. Hancock, because both of those books just weren't it. Alright, so that's all I have for this video. As always, thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you've read any of these books or wanted to read any of these books, let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!